Now, for more updates, TVC News senior reporter Sifon Esien joins me on the news. He joins me from the nation's capital. Sifon, as you go through, some of the conversations there at that meeting, which has now ended, one of the things that really, catches anyone's attention is the fact that they said West Africa is gradually being turned into an arena of power and competition. Speak to us more on that and other resolutions reached.
Well, it was emphasized that proxy wars are now being fought in West Africa, an indication that global powers, perhaps, working with certain elements, may be engaged or are being engaged in certain acts of competition, which have, played out as wars within the sub-regions, and which also have been exemplified by certain challenges and threats, as we've seen, posed by terrorism in the sub-region.
And they also talked about 3 threats. Speak to us on that. And then what is the strategy to tackle all of these challenges?
Well, talking about the threats as expressed by the commissioner, Ecowas commissioner in charge of peace, is also, just like you mentioned earlier, threats posed by terrorism, political instability, and the likes, and global competition in the proxy wars that have been recorded within the sub-region. But the bloc has resolved to forge an inclusive action or an inclusive front in combating these challenges. It has also identified that the challenges have also manifested in political instability. We've seen regime change in several of those countries, like the 3 countries that were absent, being led by a junta, and which the bloc has said they are optimistic that these brothers, in the words of the Chief of Defense Staff of Nigeria, will return back to the fold. Now, the strategy is to work together, across board, engage kinetic and non-kinetic approaches to maintain peace, stability, and forge economic prosperity in the sub-region.
And again, clearly, we see that Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso were absent from that meeting, as they were during the meeting of the Ecowas heads of state and government. It is not within the purview of the Chief of the Defense Staff in this region anyway, but what more was said about that in terms of maybe dialogue and how to, just what more was said about that?
Well, the bloc has been engaging in dialogue with these 3 countries that have withdrawn and formed an alliance, which in itself, the bloc has said, poses some challenges to regional integration, and that the challenges also posed by terrorism would be such that these 3 countries alone may not be able to handle it. So they have to fall back within the Ecowas as a regional organization to be able to tackle the problems. So engagements across board, diplomatic engagements, are on to ensure that these countries come back to the bloc.
Thank you so much, Sifon, for that update. Correspondent, a senior reporter live for us in the nation's capital, Sifon Esien. Let's turn attention now to